For me, social media has added a complete new layer to the way we operate as journalists. Traditionally, we'd be using traditional wire services and then our journalists within the field to try and stay across events as they unfolded. But now, by using social media in a very structured fashion, which is the way I use it, I've already cast a net across, say for example, during foreign affairs, the foreign world, everything outside of the US, to stay across what's going on. And that puts us one step ahead of the game. We immediately know that if something happens within Yemen, by using social media, if we're following the right people, we can pick up on that before it becomes anywhere near mainstream news. And that's a layer which didn't exist before social media. We couldn't get down to things that quickly. You have to put a lot of time into social media for news gathering. You can't just dive in and stick a search term in and find out what's happening in Iran. To get quality verified information, you need to be following the right people. And I built that up over time. I started with well-known commentators within regions and then looked at who, for example, they were following, and looked at them for a long period of time to see if their information was accurate and verified. And then also, on top of that, I looked for sources which are out there which are verified. You know, we can use social media to get to those like the Foreign Office in the UK, for example, who'd put statements out online on Twitter before anywhere else at the moment. PJ Crowley during the Arab Spring, the first statement we heard from the US was always through PJ Crowley's Twitter account. So as well as looking at those on the ground, we can also look at those who are traditional, more mainstream sources of information which we trust and which are verified through, say, for example, Twitter's verification methods. And immediately we can start to build a kind of tiered, layered system to actually structure our news gathering. You have to look to try and verify and check this information as much as you can and put it through the same journalistic standards that we would any other fact. And there's tools now available to do that. You know, for footage coming out of, say, for example, somewhere like the US, Google Street View provides an amazing way to try and verify if it's actually the location people are saying it is. In the Arab world, I used Google Earth. It's not as easy, but you can still check landmarks, you can do weather checks. You know, is the weather the same? There was a famous video which dropped when Saif Gaddafi had gone underground as Tripoli was falling. And it ran on a number of agencies. And it was actually Saif Gaddafi from February. He was wearing a down jacket. Now, at the time it was released, it was 45 degrees in Libya. And it's those things which you can use and the checks you can put in place using new technology to try and curate and verify information and make sure that it's actually legitimate. And obviously there's limits. You know, with Syria, for example, when journalists haven't been able to get in there, everyone's relying on video from user-generated content. And you have to do as much as you can to try and make sure that that is legitimate and isn't being recycled, because on both sides there is an information war. And I think it's easy for people to forget that. In journalism, we've always looked to try and work out how we can engage with an audience. When people first used papers or radio and then TV, we were always trying to interact with an audience and see how we could capture their attention. And social media allows us to do that. And it also allows the audience to contact us in a very, very easy way. And for me, my Twitter following is actually almost to an extent a team which will come to you and tip you off if they see something that's happening that you need to be aware of. And then you can dive in and check out if that information is verified or not. When I covered the London riots from a news desk, I was following lots of great journalists out in the field on Twitter, those of us that I worked with at the time and also from other organisations. But on top of that, other people who followed me wanted to tip me off on things they thought were going on in their area, which I could then check on and find out and see if it was true or not and feed that information back in. And it's a two-way conversation now. It isn't just journalists broadcasting to an audience, it's actually engaging with the audience, and that's what really enhances the journalism. I use Facebook Subscribe. I've been on there for a fair few months now, and I find again it's a good way to engage with an audience which is consuming news in a different way now. They're consuming news and information from the likes of Twitter and Facebook and social media, and they're getting very used to it. It's different to Twitter though. You know, you don't want to bombard your audience with constant updates. People don't consume Facebook like that. And I think you need to pick out the choice pieces of information to pass on, and also add potentially a bit more personality. I think people are very used to people's personalities on Facebook, and I think it's somewhere where you can probably add a bit more personality which you wouldn't necessarily add to, say, for example, Twitter. There's very little time lag between somebody letting a news desk know. I mean, I've worked on an international TV station's news desk for many years now, and the time lag between a journalist calling in, letting the desk know what's happening, and then them tweeting it is seconds. You know, it's very limited. So it always really needs to flow through a news desk, in my opinion, if it's a breaking news line from a journalist in the field. If it's other information, it's already out there in the public domain from, say, for example, another news organisation or a journalist you're following, and as a result, it's already there. You know, yes, you've retweeted it, you may have passed that information on, but you've also alerted everybody else within your news organisation, and you're working to move, you know, maybe potentially your logistics that way. So I think it's one of these things, eternal questions that always comes up, but I think it needs to be looked at not just as social media in a news organisation, but just how social media integrates into a news organisation and how news organisations operate.